Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Ranger Gareth podcast, where we talk about all of the best, most exciting local nature news. I am joined here by my friend and former podcast guest, Matthew. We're going to dive right into it. Matthew, say hi, but say it aggressively.
Hi.
Nice. So, hey! The government of Alberta plans to reduce the population of wild and feral horses in Alberta through a combination of, I believe it was, hunting and equine birth control. Advocacy groups are referring to this as equine genocide. The primary advocacy group is the Help Alberta Wildie Society, aka HAWS. The province says that wild horses are damaging the land. Whereas another biologist, Wayne McCrory, who released a report for Hawes, found that most of the damage came from clear-cut logging, off-road vehicles, and cattle. Alberta proposed a wild horse cull in 2014, but backed down after stiff opposition. So far, more than 15,000 Albertans have signed the petition against the birth control and removal of wild horses, and to have them designated a naturalized species. Now, this one's a little weird because horses are kind of native to Alberta, but also kind of not. They were on North America, and then they all got wiped out, and then they got reintroduced a few hundred years ago. So, how do you feel about them being a naturalized species versus a natural species? It's an interesting designation.
I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know. It just seems weird to me. We have so many other ungulates and everything else and cattle, as you mentioned, out in a lot of the areas in the foothills where natural horses tend to roam. And at the end of the day, I don't really see them being a negative impact. It's not like we're dealing with, herds of 10, 20, 50,000 heads that are, just eating entire grasslands bare. Now, when it comes to the damage into the environment, I would definitely say the human demographic is definitely up there. I mean, areas that I've gone camping this year, Little Elbow area, Powderface Trails, yes, they do a great job at, trail maintenance, trying to keep people on that way, on the designated trails, but you still see even those trails are horribly ripped up.
Yeah. Plus, if we're going to talk about animal damage, a lot of the areas, I think every area that the wild horses live in Alberta, there are also cattle grazing leases. I know in my old district in the Elbow Valley, there were grazing leases all through there.
Yeah.
Nordegg area, there were grazing leases. The whole Eastern Slopes has grazing leases. So if we're concerned about animals eating too much,
how about the tens of thousands of head of cattle?
Yes.
And now that is, I don't want to say that, have some PETA activists be like, yeah, stop all the cattle. I like my beef. I love my wild game. Would I eat wild horse? Probably not.
I might.
I mean, we could always ask our premier about that. Or, sorry, ex-premier. Sorry.
Moving on. The government of Alberta has released their draft Upper Smoky sub-regional plan in March. Critics are concerned because it can allow for clear-cut logging on critical southern mountain caribou habitat. Deforestation and habitat fragmentation are the key contributors to caribou population decline. So I read the draft plan, and here are some highlights. This sub-region represents almost 2% of Alberta, from south of Grand Prairie along the eastern slopes down past Grand Cache. I've fished all through that area, some excellent fishing, good for Athabasca rainbow trout and bull trout. The sub-region contains natural resources including timber, petroleum, natural gas, coal, metallic and industrial minerals, sand and gravel, and rangelands that support grazing. A callback to our grazing leases again. The sub-region has a lot of industrial developments, including one forest management agreement area, which covers 69% of the sub-region, petroleum and natural gas subsurface agreements, which cover 58% of the sub-region, metallic and industrial minerals, which cover 19%, coal agreements, which cover 13%, and grazing dispositions, which cover 1.6%. There are also 67 registered fur management areas across the sub-region, so very active in the trapping community. The vision of the plan stated, with an abundance of natural resources, the Upper Smoky subregion allows for a vibrant economy while ensuring that there is an abundance and diversity of wildlife and habitats where future generations can continue to enjoy traditional land uses, our outdoor heritage, and experiences. It's clear that they're trying to find a balance between industry, recreational opportunities, and conservation. As someone that has spent a fair amount of time up there, you've also spent your fair amount of time in that area, right?
Yes, I have. I do a lot of late season elk hunting up in that generalized region. So
How do you feel about possibly increased development up there? The area is fairly remote.
It is. I think a lot of what you see in there, besides like logging roads and some roadways that would be going in, is most of the industrial large scale work is typically going to be, I want to say, like fly in, fly out style. I'm sure you will have some localized workforce up that way. But once you start thinking north of Grand Prairie in Alberta, there aren't a lot of people.
This one would be south of Grand Prairie, though.
Oh, sorry.
From Grand Prairie to Grand Cache, approximately.
Oh, my bad.
Because that one, I have noticed, like, there's already some industrial development. There's the mine right beside Highway 40.
Yes.
Yeah,
there's a lot of
the
logging
forestry,
that goes on
the
that way,
logging.
just north on Highway 40, just off 16 and stuff like that. So
And this is one where I have kind of mixed feelings. Caribou. They're so fragile. It's like, how do I put this without pissing off my ecologist side of this audience? Caribou aren't helping themselves a lot. They're not super adaptable. They need completely intact habitats. Any roadways or habitat fragmentation affect them very negatively. When it comes to striking a balance between conservation and industry, you can't strike that balance when caribou are involved.
yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that one. I mean, like, even where I am in northern Alberta for work, I mean, like, we have caribou populations up there, and it's super interesting to see them when you're up at work.
Yeah.
But even then, at that point, there's so much regulations with reporting, giving them a wide berth, and everything else because it is such a fragile species. So
I have a former coworker who's fish and wildlife up in that area, and he told me that during the migration, a lot of them would get smoked on the highway by semis because they're not super spatially aware.
no.
Like it's tough, but out of all the ungulates in North America, I feel like they're the ones that are having the most trouble.
Yeah, and I mean, going off what you said, I remember one of my friends out in BC, his stepfather used to drive like transport trucks in northern Alberta, and I remember him telling me a story now where exactly of that. There was a herd of caribou on the road late at night, came around a corner, got on the horn, and the herd just froze. And that was a huge issue for him, being an owner-operator and all the responsibility and liability for everything of that. So
what happens to a truck driver that runs over an endangered species?
I don't remember a lot of the details of like any reprimands that happened. I know, as I said, as an owner-operator, he was out of work. I think they said it was like 2 to 3 weeks before repairs could be completely done on his truck. Like, basically his rig was just on the side of the road until they could get somebody up to tow it out. He had to deal with his contractor to basically get a different driver up to basically finish transporting the load and everything else. So it was quite an ordeal that he had to go through for all of it.
No good. Next up, the Ellis Nature Center outside of Lacombe is inviting visitors to take part in a new hands-on project designed to track pollinators in the area. The initiative, called Buzzing Biodiversity, asks community members to become citizen scientists by recording the types of pollinators spotted in the center's water garden and newly developed pollinator garden. Visitors can participate by picking up a pamphlet and data sheet, then using a counting square to observe and record insects for 15 minutes. Any photos taken are uploaded to iNaturalist, where experts help identify the species. Have you been to Ellis Nature Center before?
No, I have not.
That's a good one to take the family to for a day trip. It's not too far from Camrose, so
No, that's one definitely that I feel like the wife and especially the daughter.
Yeah.
She loves bees.
very worth it.
Yeah.
Very
so-
worth it. Now a story that makes me very happy, but makes a lot of people a little testy. Some of you might have missed this great news. The black-billed magpie has been voted Edmonton's city bird. Yes, that magpie. The one that eats your trash and wakes you up at 5 a.m. It even beat out the blue jay and the boreal chickadee, taking home almost 40% of the 40,000 votes that were cast. Edmonton is also officially certified as a bird-friendly city by Nature Canada. This designation is awarded to municipalities that demonstrate efforts to reduce threat to birds, protect natural habitats, and educate residents about maintaining healthy and resilient ecosystems. I also did vote for the magpie, and I'm very happy it won.
I mean, not living inside the city anymore, I wasn't aware of this, but as much as I find it hilarious, I'd say it's also quite fitting because
It is.
everybody in Edmonton loves yelling at everybody,
Uh-huh.
and they're all kind of a bit of a klepto, and they love shiny things. So,
Yeah, we eat trash. We yell at our neighbors.
Yeah.
I love magpies because they're intelligent, they're curious, they're mischievous. All birds in that family, the corvids, so the crows, the jays, the ravens, the magpies, they all kind of have like that reputation. Like, oh, you don't nail something down, they're gonna take it. They will.
Very fitting for Edmonton.
I respect it. Now, finally, this one is the spiciest story. So, anyone in Alberta may be familiar with it's gone by a couple different names, but basically the Orphan Well program or the Mature Asset Strategy. But basically, what happens to old oil and gas wells when they are abandoned? So a well that has been abandoned is referred to as an orphan well. For a long time, the way the program worked, and Matthew, you probably understand it a bit better than I do, but the way the program worked, from my understanding, was that any company that was extracting oil and gas in Alberta would have to pay upfront to the government a certain amount of money, so that way, if they went out of business, that money could be used to clean up the wells that were left behind. Is that a somewhat accurate explanation?
I would say yes. I mean, I remember about a decade ago, this came to the forefront in the news as well. It was just something that a lot of people weren't aware of the process that was involved with it. Now, I can't remember if that would have been when the whole original buy-in for the Orphan Well Fund started, or if there was an increase to the payments because the government at the time realized that the fund that they had wouldn't be able to properly remediate any of the abandoned wells. So, there was a bit of change up with that. And I mean, now that it's coming to the forefront again, from what I remember of it, it was basically a company, when they proposed for the drilling and everything else, the government's like, great, you're going to drill this well. We require X amount up front as basically an abandonment project. If you properly cap off the well and remediate, you get your payment back if you were responsible for it. If you weren't, and basically, or your company went bankrupt, as you had previously stated, everything is covered, or they have the funds available to do the remediation on their own. With the sale and transfer of wells, because this isn't from the major players in Alberta, will say that they were having a lot of issues. It was as these projects or facility sites, wells, started to become low producers, eventually the large companies would sell everything out to smaller independent run firms, and it was the independent run firms that we were having issues with. So basically, a lot of it was once again, from my understanding, there would have to be the transfer of the money going in from the fund. So if company A was selling to company B, there would have to be some sort of arrangement between them that either company B was paying for the well plus what company A put into the fund, or basically buying that. At the end of the day, they're buying in company A out of that fund. So the original company is recouping their cost because the well is no longer the responsibility. So I'm not sure about the changes that they're proposing with it now.
We're gonna dive into it. So for anyone that wants to read an excellent article, there was one written by the Narwhal titled "Broken Trust, Senior Political Staffers Met by Jeers at Meeting with Rural Albertans." So on September 9th, around 100 people were in the Warburg Community Hall to hear Vitor Marciano, the Chief of Staff to Alberta's Energy Minister, talk about the Mature Asset Strategy. It is a series of recommendations the government says will help the oil and gas industry's unpaid taxes and leases, which include tens of thousands of inactive wells and environmental liabilities of almost $38 billion, according to the Alberta Energy Regulator. A large part of the argument came over the fact that the public perception is that the Mature Asset Strategy lets a lot of bad companies get off the hook and puts the burden back on the taxpayer. This is referred to as the tragedy of the commons, where one company or individual gets all of the benefits and then the disadvantages or liabilities fall upon all of the other people that did not get anything out of this. So the meeting in Warburg got a little testy. Marciano was interrupted a few times during his presentation by upset members of the public. It does sound like our tax dollars are going to be put up to clean up a lot of these old orphan wells, which is not fair to people like me that got no real benefit from the oil and gas industry. I'm not saying I'm anti-industry, but I am saying I'm anti-cleaning up somebody else's mess when it should be their problem. If I drove my truck into a lake and it leaked fluids everywhere, I would get in a lot of trouble from Alberta Environment, as I should. You have a face. There's something going on here. What's up?
Yes. I completely agree with you on those points. Now, industry has their own fun side of things where, depending on, and once again, I'm sure there's nuances that these companies are working on and working with through legal contracts to allow them to get away from this, but I'm a firm believer, as most of the patrons with that, also being direct member of the industry, we need to hold these companies and people responsible for it. Now I understand, as I said previously, there was a plan in place for this to work, and if this plan isn't working appropriately and there's these holes and gaps in it, we shouldn't be looking at throwing this back at the taxpayers. I mean,
Nope.
This is multi-billion-dollar industries. Even some of these small players, the net worth of some a small oil and gas company coming in typically is ranging in the hundreds of millions of dollars. You don't get to operate in the patch unless you're ready to play with the big boys, and that takes a lot of capital. And if you're saying now that these companies don't have the capital or the wherewithal to abandon and remediate wells to the standards that we're expecting of them, now, I want to play the devil's advocate and say, look at both sides of it. Now, is it just that the terms and stipulations of our remediation aren't up to par for the general population? Or is it just that the industry, these companies, they're either following it, the contract to the letter, and doing the base that they can get away with to save costs, or in the case of where they go bankrupt, I understand if a company goes bankrupt, it's they step away from it. But we maybe need to like understand industry as industry, and you can't be like, well, you can't give me a proven 10-year track record of, profitable business, so we're not going to sell you this asset. But, maybe we need to take a harder look at, companies themselves, find out is like, hey, is this a shell company? Is this a company under the same, independent run, like LLP company, where, hey, they're changing, they have a company name they operate under, but it's just a numbered business, and every 3 years that numbered business just rolls over. If that's the case, maybe we should start looking at that, because yes, this is a large scale environmental thing, but personal side of it, I have family on the other side of the country where he had what was supposed to be like a $700,000 home built for him, and it just happened to be during the COVID era of things, and well, the contractor kept coming back, well, we need more money, things are more expensive, we need more expensive. Their build ended up going until 2022, where prices actually came back down, and suddenly it was like, okay, well, you said you needed this $80,000 extra for building materials. You haven't even dug the hole for the foundation in the ground, so give me my money back.
Yeah.
And these companies are just like, oh, well, and next thing you know, my brother's finding out the hard way that he's not the first person that this guy has done this to, and
That's gross.
He's run through multiple company numbers doing the same thing to other people.
Scammer.
Yeah. So, and is big industry really any different than the little guy at the end of the day?
Better lawyers. To give people an idea of how much money is still on the line, there are the municipalities in Alberta are owed $254 million in outstanding property taxes from oil and gas companies, while another $200 million has been written off over the past decade, never to be collected. So, just think of all the things $254 million could do for your community. New playgrounds, better roads, better sidewalks, an actual train line connecting Edmonton to Calgary, anything like that. There are nearly 80,000 inactive wells across the province. The government has paid more than $150 million to cover lease obligations for private companies between 2010 and 2024. Now, let me make that clear. When they say the government paid that, that means we paid that.
Yes.
We paid $150 million over the last 14 years to cover private company obligations. It's just not fair for the rest of us.
And part of the thing to take away with that as well is, a lot of these things we think the patch and, in northern Alberta, remote areas, that's only one small facet of, the oil and gas industry in Alberta.
Yeah.
A lot of the wells that they're talking about, it's normally conventional oil and stuff like that, which tends to be more centralized in southern Alberta. And, a lot of these, their wells are on private property. They're in farmers' fields, they're nearby some people's homes.
Like all the pump jacks?
Yeah. And, just because they're said, okay, well, we've capped them off. Well, if they're not properly sealed, it's literally just a pipe with a screw cap on the end of it, coming out of the ground. So, once again, being in the industry, southern Alberta, typically a lot more conventional oil, sweet gas wells, stuff like that. Like, it typically doesn't tend to be as sour. But then again, you look at the Caroline area and some of the wells and oil production that they have out there, it's almost as sour as what we deal with up north. And that's, some of these pipe caps, if they're leaking and you get caught in a cloud of, H2S by it, it can be bad enough to, put somebody down.
Jeez.
So,
to make it clear, soured literally just means sulfur is in the mix.
Yeah, hydrogen sulfide. So toxic gas that basically over like 20 ppm is starting to become dangerous. Over 200 ppm, so parts per million, you can start looking at fatal exposure.
Jeez.
And like the Caroline facility, they operate at like 2%. So that's like 20,000 ppm. Where I am, we have areas in our facility through the sulfur extraction part where we rock like 50%. So it's definitely like, from being in the industry around stuff like that, I mean, hell, even when I go backcountry camping with the family and we see, because like we do a lot of crown land camping on
Yep.
lease roads and stuff like that, and you see pump jacks or, you know, just like wells and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, we're just going to stay away from here because you never know the state of that stuff. And
You don't want to sleep through a cloud of toxic gas.
yeah.
Understandable.
So there's definitely a huge safety aspect to it. And I mean, like, that's not saying everything you come across is going to kill you. I'm definitely not that world-ending mentality of it. But it's, you know, take it with a grain of salt. And best protection is just avoidance in this case.
Yeah.
And when you have 80,000 wells that are abandoned, that means it's 80,000 that you don't know the current state of. These are not just like a water well where, you know, there's potentially no pressure or anything behind them. Some of these casings can still be pressurized. So.
Not good. Industry, do better. We know you can. We know you can. You'll need to. Well, thanks for joining me for today's episode, Matt. And for anyone listening at home, thanks for listening. Adios.